Hi guys, welcome back. So today we're going to take a look at get element. Get element is basically it's used in a flow to get information that's present on a record or group of records. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start by creating a new flow. I'm going to press on the new flow button. It'll open up a screen like this and I'm going to select screen flow, click create. And here is where you add elements. So we'll add the get records element. We'll call it get account record info. Press tab so it automatically creates an API name. Get records of this object. So this is where you mention which object you need to get records of. We'll say account. As soon as you do that, you'll have a list of other criterias that open up. The first one is filter account records. So this, if you don't mention anything in these filter fields, it's just gonna fetch all account records, and it's gonna perform action. It's gonna like get information about all the account records, which we don't want. So we just want information regarding a particular record. And if you see on the URL, every record has a particular record ID and it's unique across all records. And we need to fetch that unique ID, for which we'll have to do this. So account ID equals, you have to create a new resource, select variable, type in record ID, and make sure to mention I as capital, otherwise it would throw an error and it wouldn't do what you wanted to do. For data type, select text and don't forget to select available for input. Press done. Now you have an option to sort account records. We don't have to do that now because we're only fetching one account record, so that's fine. And then you have two questions here. So how many records to store? Only the first record, all records. For now, we'll just select only the first record. The next question here is how to store record data. You have three options: automatically store all fields, choose fields and let Salesforce do the rest, choose fields and assign variables, advanced. The first one, if you select the first option, automatically store all fields, Salesforce itself would just automatically store all fields and you would be able to access this by calling this get records element. The second option is choose fields and let Salesforce do the rest. So in this, you get to choose which fields you want. So in case I want annual revenue, I select annual revenue here and say add field and select billing city if I want billing city, and it would just store these two values. Salesforce would then automatically create variables and it would store these values in those variables. Now, the third option is choose fields and assign variables. So that's what we are going to select for today. Then when you select this option, you have another question that pops up: where to store field values. And you have two options: together in a record variable, in separate variables. Today we're going to take a look at what happens if you select the first option and also what happens if you select the second option. So the first option, basically it stores all the information in a record type variable, whereas in the second option it stores fields in different variables. So you create different variables and it stores the values in those different variables. So let's take a look at what happens if I select together in a record variable. If you select this, then you have to provide Salesforce with a record variable. Now we need to create a new record variable since we already don't have a record variable that exists. So press on new resource, say variable, and here we're gonna say account record. Some I'll say store account record. Data type. So data type is record. Since we wanted to store it as a record in a record type, we select record here, and we also have to mention which object we need to store variables of. So account object is what we need, and press done. So when you do that, it automatically populates it with the record variable that you just created, store account record. And yeah, so that's all we have to mention here. So say done. Now I am going to, so now this one will show you what happens if you select store it as a record. And I'm going to create another element to show you what happens if you store it as separate variables. So I just made a copy of that. I can show you again how you make a copy. So select this and press copy element. Press on this add element button and paste the element that you copied. You go into this element and you can just change the name. So you can get rid of copy one. So get account record info separate variable, separate yeah, so just say separate for now, and total it automatically populates the API name. Everything else stays the same. So get records of this object, so get records of account object, and you just need this record ID, and only first record, choose fields and assign variables advanced. So for the first one, we selected together in a record variable. For this, we're gonna select in separate variables. I only want two values, that is industry and annual revenue. I'm gonna select industry here, and I need to create a new resource to store the industry value. Say variable store industry, record type is text, say done. The next one that I need is annual revenue. Annual revenue, and I need to create a new resource for this. So say variable store annual revenue. Data type is currency, and select done. Select done again. So now we have two elements that will show you what happens if you store all the values as a record, and what happens if you store values separately. I'm gonna hit save. Mention a flow name and press save again. Debug. When I go onto the debug screen, I can see that it's asking me to key in record ID as an input variable. I'm gonna go to the record and select this, copy the record ID, come in here and paste it, hit run. Okay, now here you can see the difference between both the get records that we created. So the first one, we wanted it to store it in a record type element, and it successfully found records, and it stored those records in this variable that we created. Whereas if you see the second one, it stored the two variables in these two, it stored the two values in these two variables that we created. So basically you can use this first type of get records storing storing style when, if you think that you're going to use you're going to use values later on. So in later on in the flow, if you want to use the different field values, then you can go for the first style. But if you think that you're not going to use any of the field values, it's just going to be used for that particular element, then you can go for this type. So this one only pulls out two values, and it's also not gonna create any issues, so it doesn't have to take up more storage space. And yeah, so that's when you use the second method of storing values. Yep, so that's about get record elements. So yep, thank you for watching.